Hello, everyone. Mitchell Roulane here. This is another episode of the Wrestling Diaries featuring our Spoken Word Sessions show. And on this, I've spoken before, and I'll give another rundown on it. This is just me. I don't have any guests on it. I'm just telling stories from my own life, reading off pieces of literature I've written or other people have written, poems, stories. I mean, anything. I'll read off song lyrics. I'll read off jokes. Whatever it is, people send more stuff in. Today I'm going to read a story by a friend of mine who was actually the very first episode of the Wrestling Diaries, Giorgio Ferreira. And he wrote the story, I think, when he was in junior high. I'm not completely certain. And it's funny because I haven't actually read the story yet. So reading it today with you is going to be the first time I'm reading it. So it's going to be exciting because I don't know what it is. And so, yeah, I'm going to read it, and that's going to be today's episode. Before we get started, though, check us out. Follow us, The Wrestling Diaries, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and a ton of other hosts that do podcasts. Also, if you want to watch our videos, go to YouTube and search The Wrestling Diaries so you can actually see the actual video part of the show. Check it out. Like, subscribe, follow us, hit the notifications, share it, let everybody know, send us your donation, send us your love, send us everything. And for this show specifically, send me your poetry, send me your letters, send anything you'd like to send. And if I feel it's noteworthy, I'll read it. So here we're going to go. We're going to get started now. This is a story called Mud on the Ego. And here goes. Ask yourself, what does it mean to step into someone else's shoes? Does it mean to imagine you in their situation? Or is it simply knocking someone over, ripping off their shoes and trying them on? It's vital to know the difference and actually do the prime example if you want to be a good, just person. Let us go back in time to when I was in 6th grade, 4 years ago. When everybody was worrying about being cool in the back of his or her mind. Some people, like me, were doing everything in the back of their heads. I was the most clueless idiot anyone would ever know. All I knew was that school was Monday through Friday, and everyone hated school, so I hated school too. I'd have to get up at 5:30 in the morning or I would get the living snot beat out of me. I went to church on Sundays and sometimes on Wednesdays only because my mom made me. Everything else was impulse. I was too young to think about my actions anyway, right? It was a normal day in April. The sun shining through the clouds, a nice breeze every now and then, the feel of the humid air gracing your every pore. This was one of the things I loved about Houston. The humidity always felt good to me. Unfortunately, I didn't get that perfect humid breeze every day, but I did have to see Max Robinson 5 days a week. Max was the kid everybody hated because he smelled bad. He was skinnier than a sewing needle. He had loads of freckles, braces, and the biggest, ugliest Coke bottle glasses you would ever see on a kid his age. And now, if I had seen this kid today, I wouldn't see a skinny, smelly, ugly, nerdy dork. I would see a human being whose appearance has no impact on my opinion of him. Not the case at this time. This kid was a dork. So, according to the media, I had to make fun of him whenever possible. And I did. All year long, I cracked joke after joke about the stupid little nerdy boy who never takes showers. I guess after so many months of my constant berating, he'd had enough. Now he was going to fight back. Now he was going to pester me in whatever way possible, whenever he could. Well, I wasn't going to let that happen for too long. It was going to be a rainy day, and I wasn't going to let some dork ruin my beautiful, humid, rainy day. I went through my first 5 classes with the blessed absence of this putrid vermin who infested my empty way of life with his constant battering of my nerves. Then there was gym, right before English. I loved gym. It was one of my favorite classes because you can run around and play games for an hour. The only problem, as you may have guessed, was that Max was in my gym class. It was wonderful before he started fighting back. Today, he did the same routine in the locker room. "Hey, Giorgio, you're a stupid loser." I, being in an empty world and ignoring everything that interfered with my routine, did nothing this time because I was happy. It was going to rain today, and it was going to rain hard. I persevered through gym class because I kept imagining the feel of the water vapor lightly brushing my skin as I stood under the cloudy yet bright sky. After too much of his pestering and my ignoring, I could no longer bear the stress of my anger towards him. As he was in the middle of a sentence, which I can't remember because all I could hear was blah, 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 blah. I'm annoying. I pushed him over the bench and looked at him with cold eyes as his head bounced off of a locker. Then I slowly let off a slight grin and walked away. No more than 3 minutes later, he came from behind me while I was walking to my class in the portables and started with his angry nerd talk again. His voice kept getting louder and louder in my head, saying all the things he ever said to make me mad, over and over again like an endless hallway with horrible acoustics full of broken records playing the most annoying voice in the world. Suddenly, after brief hesitation, I turned around and glared at him with my eyes full of the hatred boiling within me, and I declared quietly at first, but with increasing intensity, "Max, shut up now!" He flinched, knowing that today I wasn't afraid to get violent. For that brief second, as I read that fear in his eyes, I heard nothing. Everything was silent. All the other kids were frozen without a sound in my head. Then suddenly, he started talking again. The only reason I understood what he was saying this time was because one of those broken records was a recording of this kid's voice, and it played over and over, louder and louder, more and more obnoxiously. "What are you gonna do, huh? You gonna push me? Go ahead, do it, do it!" It took me a second to react because I wasn't normally very violent, and I would need to hear that insufferable voice a little longer this time in order to react. Then, in a flash, all the revulsion, all the loathing, everything he said to me took over my body. And as if to make this all the more pleasing to my dark side, I pushed him coincidentally into a puddle of mud, and even more coincidentally, as he was shouting, "That's what I thought! I knew you wouldn't do anything!" All was quiet once again, and I smiled as the sun began to creep out of the clouds. I looked around at all the passerby, and I saw them laughing. Their laughter served as approval of my actions, so I let out a light chuckle and began to feel triumphant. I had finally shut him up. I could now live in peace in my own little empty world. Suddenly, I began to feel the weight of the guilt holding me down, weakening my stride, if not my entire being. Then when the girl I had a crush on walked by and cracked a joke about her broken arm without any mention of what I had just done, I felt even worse. What if she knows and she's just pretending to be my friend? What if she doesn't know and I can never tell her how horrible I am? Then I went swiftly back into thinking about what I had done rather than what other people thought. Little did I know I was adding meaning to my world. Why do I feel so bad? How can I be guilty? This has nothing to do with school or church or rainy days. This can't be real. Although English class, I reflected on what I had done, why it was so horrible, and I had realized there's more to life than school and church and rainy days. For some reason, I have to be a good person, or at least I should try. Being the thorough thinker I am, I considered what would have happened had I not pushed him. If I were a good person and I politely asked him to stop pestering me, knowing him, he would have brought up my treating him like the bacteria in a heap of trash. Then we would have gotten into a little argument, and I, being a good person, would have agreed not to make fun of him anymore. Sadly, however, I was so shallow that I justified my actions with the fact that doing the right thing would have taken more time and I would have been late to class. Still, this justification was weak. It would take more than that to get this guilt out of me. For the first time in my life, I accepted the consequences of my actions. One day of DMC, which was the in-school suspension of Arnold Junior High, my first day of DMC ever, it was the most horrifyingly boring day of my life. Unlike most schools, when you had DMC at Arnold, you would have to write an entire page of rules, then write a set of 50 random words 10 times each. If you didn't finish that before the end of the day, you'd have to come back and do it again. Once you were done, you were expected to do nothing but follow those rules, which meant all you could really do was nothing at all. The only exception was schoolwork. They were responsible enough to give you the work you would have to do in class, but it was rare to have much work because it was more of a hands-on type of school with fewer worksheet and more group work and activities. I couldn't believe I had accepted this. It was torture, but I deserved it. Eventually, I decided to acknowledge the fact that talking to Max would have been the right thing to do. I should have put myself in his shoes and thought about how I would feel if I were in his position rather than act on my own selfish pride. I didn't dare apologize to him, though. I knew if I did, he would have made me suffer in the worst ways possible. Plus, since I had pushed him twice with little hesitation, he was too scared to get on my nerves now. I wouldn't have pushed him again, but he didn't know that. And if I expressed even the slightest bit of regret, he would have known and would probably have started getting on my nerves again. Regardless of my failure to apologize, I admitted my guilt and accepted the consequences. Ultimately, that experience became a step in the staircase of life rather than in a brick wall. The end. So, the moral of that story is that you just, you beat the hell out of some kid to where they're scared and they don't mess with you anymore. Right? Is that what you took from that, Matt? I don't know if I see the lesson in the story. Do you? Like, how did he learn the consequences? He had detention or whatever, but it wasn't for pushing that guy. It was from something else. I guess he was just ate up with internal guilt or something like that. Basically, the moral of the story, without being super weird and going into this just like tangent I'm going on right now, is you don't judge people on the outside. Be a friend to everybody. Be cool to everybody. Don't be mean. Although I gotta say though, if he stunk, I would have told him he stunk. And if he was annoying me, I probably would have slapped shit out of him too. Like if he was but granted, based on the story, he was annoying him because Giorgio was making fun of him. So it was just his retaliation. I don't know. Kids are weird. Kids are weird little egotistical, selfish little things. Moral of the story, ladies and gentlemen. Don't judge a book by its cover. Be nice to everybody. Be nicer to the people that people are less nice to. Just be that person. Anyways, hopefully people enjoyed that story. Giorgio, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I really appreciate it. It was really good. Ladies and gentlemen, send in more of your stuff. Send in more of your stories, poems, whatever. I'll read them off. And next week, I think I'm going to do some romance for the ladies. Yeah. Anyways, hey, follow us, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Tell me, what do you wrestle with and how can you beat it? One love.